Okay, so I'm going to try and keep this down to like 6 minutes. So, starting up again, we are going to cover shape dynamics. So you'll notice also that on the brush palette you have all these different categories here. These are sort of characteristics of the brush. And when you click on the the word, the label for each category, it takes you to the sort of editing panel for that category for that characteristic for your brush. Um, and so we're going to look at shape dynamics. And also, I just want to remind you that the brush, remember, is basically one of these bitmaps just repeated over and over again along the length of your stroke. So shape dynamics. Basically, shape dynamics makes your brush pointy. And it does a couple of other cool things, but let's just look at the minimum diameter function here. I'm going to turn my transfer on. And so in order for Photoshop to understand that you want a pointy tip, you have to make sure that your this control drop-down menu is set to pen pressure as opposed to pen tilt or stylus wheel or fade. But what we want Photoshop to be, the input from the tablet that we want Photoshop to be using is we want it to be reading the pen's pressure. So we're going to say pen pressure. And if the minimum diameter slider is set to 0, well, let me get one of those. Let me get a little circle brush here. If the minimum diameter is set to 0%, then if I touch really lightly, I get a really thin tip, and if I push really hard, it goes to fat. So once again, it's using my pen pressure to determine how thin the line is. So very light touch, it's very thin, and very heavy, it gets fat. There are some kind of specialty, I don't know, specialty sliders here, some specialty variables here. You have angle jitter and roundness jitter and size jitter. And basically what that does is it takes, each one of these sliders takes the bitmap that our brush is using, and it adds some variability to it. So size changes the variable, it varies the size of each one of those little bitmaps. So I'm going to space out the bitmap so you can kind of see what it's doing. So as I drag that size jitter up and down, so now you can see, as you can see, when it's set to 0, each one of these little dots is uniform in size, except because I have my pen pressure on, but I'll turn that off. So these are uniform in size. But if I drag that up, it randomizes their size. Angle jitter, that deals with, you really see that most when your brush is squished. And what this does is it adds some randomness to the way that that circle is angled. And roundness just does some weird stuff. It just does that. Now you might be asking yourself, what in the world would I need to use this for? Well, you can do some fun stuff with it. So let's squish the brush to a really thin, and then I can do some fun. That looks like kind of like maybe a hose or something, right? I've got my spacing spaced out a little bit so that they just sort of kiss each other a little bit. And now I kind of have a weird hose shape. Now you might wonder, why is that? Why are those oval shapes tracking perfectly along the path, or tracking perfectly along the direction that I'm moving my stylus? Well, that's a good question. That's because I have my angle jitter set to direction. What this does is I'm telling Photoshop to sense the direction that my stylus is moving in, as opposed to the pen pressure. It's ignoring the pen pressure, and it's sensing the direction for my angle. So it's like, well, what angle should I draw this little circle? I'm saying, well, Photoshop, if you want to know what angle to move my little circle, I want you to use the direction information from my stylus to determine the angle. So now if I move my stylus more or less horizontally, it's going to track in that direction, my horizontal. But if I move vertically, it senses the vertical direction, and it moves my little circle bitmap in a vertical direction because that's the direction that my pen is moving. And if I sort of move my stylus around in a curvy pattern, it follows the direction. It always forces that little circular bitmap in the direction of my forward movement. Now, it works that way if I have it sort of, so what it does is it's like, well, it takes, I think it takes this vertical axis here and it pushes and it aligns my bitmap with the vertical axis relative to the direction of my brush. So if I turn my brush this way so that now the skinny dimension is oriented vertically, then it'll take that skinny direction and move it in the direction of the stylus. So again, now I've got the long side oriented on the vertical, so etc. That's how it works. So that's kind of cool. Why is that cool? Well, here's some cool things you can do with this. If I get a square brush, oh, I'm almost done. I got 2 minutes. If I do a square brush and I do my spacing like this, I can make a dotted line that follows the direction of my pen. I can make a cool spiky vine by getting a circular brush, squishing this like so, moving my spacing out a little bit, and turning on pen pressure for control, moving my size jitter a little bit, moving my minimum diameter up a little bit, moving my angle a little bit, and I'm going to turn off my direction control. And actually, I'm going to drop this down. And I'm going to make this angle a little bit. And now I can do like some weird spiky path thing. What if I turn on my minimum diameter all the way? And I think I'll just scoot this closer together. And now I'm going to make like a spiky vine, like a thorny vine. That's pretty cool, huh? Okay, so that's shape dynamics.